especially anyone that's still live with us on Facebook. Welcome to Boulder's Brass Podcast. It is Friday the 28th of January 2022 for anyone that's listening from the future. And we are running our fundraising podcast-a-thon, and we're here in the fourth panel of the day. That's right, isn't it? Yes, I can do counting. It's a good start. Fourth panel of the day. We're going to be discussing all things entrepreneurship and making yourself stand out in the music industry. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, tell us a bit about what you do, and then we've got some really interesting questions to get stuck into. So I'll let you battle out who wants to go first.
Great. My name's Ashley Killam. I'm currently here. It's 7 a.m. in Southwest Virginia in the United States. I am the founder of Diversify the Stand. I am the general manager of Rising Tide Music Press, a no-profit publishing company. I give lectures across the country and do have this whole Mod Podge career. So I'm excited to chat with everyone.
Amazing.
And I am Rhiannon Jeffreys. I am actually not a brass player. Please don't kick me off your podcast. I really want to be here. I am actually a woodwind player. I play flute, clarinet and saxophone. I studied at Trinity Laban, same as well. And I have also done lots of teaching for the past few years since graduating in 2015. And then recently I have become the founder and director of Starling Music Academy, which is an online platform which is initially going to be teaching music theory online, but lots of plans for the future. So that's fun.
That's okay, don't worry, we don't kick off the non-brass players here. You're very welcome. You're not the only one being included in the podcast-a-thon, and plus you kind of get a free pass because you're engaged to a brass player, so you've gotten it in.
That's
you're
true.
fine.
I was gonna, if there was any problems, I was gonna say, oh, but my fiance's a trumpet player.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm really excited to hear about all the things that you've done with the different organisations. So the first question is quite a sort of broad and loosey-goosey one. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to be able to pitch in some ideas on some of these. Lots of people refer to what I do with the podcast as being entrepreneurial, and I'm like, well, I talk a lot of nonsense into my microphone in my living room. I don't know if that counts, but maybe it counts. But the first question then is, what does being an entrepreneur mean to you? And do you think it takes different forms for different people? Or is this word entrepreneur sort of more of a one-size-fits-all?
Well, I think for lots of people it's very different. So I'll give my perspective on it. I think that being an entrepreneur is all about taking a risk and being the driving force behind what your project is about or what your business is about. So the literal definition, I believe, is to do with taking on the financial risk. But I think it's about seeing an opportunity, seizing it, and running with your idea. I personally also think it does have something to do with innovation. So I think, if you're going to start up a car dealership, is that necessarily, are you an entrepreneur? You're definitely a business owner, but are you an entrepreneur? So for me, it does all tie in with innovation. It's about seeing a gap in the market or a niche that hasn't been explored and going for that.
Mm. I completely agree with the niche and filling the hole. For me too, I think taking the non-standard path, not necessarily like, how in university and in academia we're taught there's like a pipeline of teaching and performing, and being an entrepreneur, you craft something else. And sometimes that's, building your own seat at the table and making your own path, and just doing something that maybe hasn't been done in a different and unique way. And that can 100% be different for every single person in music ever.
I agree. I think it's going to be totally different for every individual. I think that possibly for Ashley and Gmail, I think as well, we have all come into our businesses from inside our industry, and we have then seen from our own experiences where the gaps are, and we've grown from there. But now that I've spoken to a lot of people in the business world, a lot of them, essentially, I sort of view it as they hover over lots of industries and they look down and they look for where are the gaps, and then they go for it, and then they learn about the industry. I personally think that we all have the advantage of, we have the lived experience within our industry, and we then, like with my business, I did do market research, but I'd already done all the market research because I knew it, I'd lived it. So I think we all identified the gaps in our market because we came from inside. but there's not the same.
Yeah. You talking about like spending time with business people made me feel real nervous for a second. Business, like, I imagine like Dragon's Den, and then it makes me like scared.
They make me
I don't know. Oh, amazing, amazing. So, do you think then that musicians nowadays, do they all need some form of entrepreneurial skills to survive in the industry?
Oh yeah, 100%. If I could make a list of all of the things I've learned this past year that one, music school didn't teach me, and two, that I learned because of the pandemic and I had a lot of time. Everything from, learning social media, like learning SEO techniques, graphic design, outreach, and writing really concise emails that people might actually read. There's so many skills that the standard like conservatory and standard school doesn't teach you at all about how to just be a brand. Because honestly, like every musician, whether or not you think you're an entrepreneur, you are your brand. And you need to find ways to market that, whether that's, you as educator or you as performer or you as something completely different. We all are a brand and need to learn some skills on how to make a career out of it.
Yeah, and what I would say is that actually what I discovered, so I won something called a Young Innovators Award, if I remember what it's called, in 2020, and that's where I got my first lot of funding. But the Young Innovators Award has nothing to do with the arts. So I went to my first online boot camp for this award. There were 64 of us winners, and we had to do a 30-second pitch. And it was terrifying because I'd never ever done a pitch, a specific, your value proposition. There's all these terms that are flying around, your USP that I'd never heard before. And it was absolutely terrifying. But what I learned after a few weeks, a few months with working with my business advisor that came as part of this funding award is that actually a lot of the skills I already had as a musician really came in handy. And I didn't realise that there was so much crossover. So, for example, I think what a lot of people don't realise, what musicians don't realise, is that if you can introduce your music at a recital, you can probably do a pitch. Yes, It is not exactly the same, but there are definitely transferable skills that a lot of people in other industries and other careers wouldn't have. They don't have that experience of speaking to a crowd. So I do think that there is a lot of crossover. Things like negotiation as well, I've had to negotiate a price for my new office space, but if somebody books you to do a gig, you may also need to negotiate a price or, negotiate, well, I can't get there for that time. There's negotiation skills that you don't realise you're using just as part of your day-to-day career as a musician.
And we've all in this space here got a project or a company or a business that we're working on. Where did you sort of start to come up with the ideas and make it this tangible thing? Because, if people don't know and they're thinking, well, maybe, I see this gap that I'd like to create something in, or even base level, I want to go out in the world and advertise myself as a teacher. Where do I start? I wonder that the starting points are fairly similar, and the things you have to consider do cross over. Where did you start out with each of your, projects, and what did you have to consider, and how did you start to make it, like I say, this tangible thing? I've lost all my adjectives. Thing is the word I'm going with.
Well, I can tell you that mine happened just totally by accident. I am as shocked as anyone else is that I'm here today. Talking to you about entrepreneurship is wild to me. But essentially, I was sitting around in April 2020. I'd already been doing nothing for a month into lockdown. And I just sort of went, I'm finding it really hard to teach music theory to my students because they have the book and I have the book, but then it's just difficult if I'm sort of saying, oh, can you see that like the third bar, the fourth note, not including the rests, that's wrong. It was so complicated. Even with scanning in, some of them don't have scanners, some of them took poor photos of the music, and it was just, I just thought, why is this so difficult? Surely there must be a solution for this, And I kind of I had nothing else to do, so I just sat around and I just mapped it out, and I went, well, how would I want it to look? What would I want it to look like if I did create something to fill this gap? And then I went for the Young Innovators Award just because I just happened to see it, and I thought, well, it'd be a good way to kind of validate if I even have any idea what I'm actually talking about. So getting that award then, you know, I was then having conversations with business advisors and things like that, and they were teaching me how to properly validate the assumptions that I'd made. Again, sorry for all the lingos. I hear myself and I'm like, who are you? But the first thing you do is you validate the assumptions. You know, you assume that this service is needed, but then you have to go out and you have to ask people. You can't just assume that. So I went through this whole process, and it's just sort of happened gradually, and I've been very lucky with the award that I got, and I recently have received another award. It's all I can't talk about it too much, though. It's very hush hush. But all I can say is that it's enabled me to be able to get my first part-time employee, and also office space. So that's all happening in March, and it's, yeah, I still don't believe it. Every time something happens, I'm like, wow, another thing has happened that I never even dreamed of. A door is open that I didn't know existed. So yeah, that's how it happened for me. So yeah, I don't know, Ashley, about you.
Yeah, I mine kind of started in 2019, like even way before Diversify the Stand. I was miserable in a practice room playing Petrushka, and I was like, I don't actually want to sit in an orchestra. Like, what am I doing? And I had a friend who was like, oh, well, I want to, like, I'm getting my master's in performance too, but I don't want to go sit in an orchestra. And I was like, wait, that's the thing? Like, you don't have to do this, like, just sit in an orchestra or a military band? Yeah. And then I took this course, in grad school, this, like, just optional, like, elective course. And it got me realizing how little rep I knew that wasn't by dead white guys. And it made me so frustrated because I'm like, what the heck? Like, I'm missing out on all of this, and there's all this good stuff. So I started doing all of this research, and that's what I centered my recital around. And from there, I went to IWBC 2019 and met Nancy Taylor, who's the trumpet professor at UTEP in Texas. She was like, you should turn this into a presentation. Like, you have this idea. And I was like, how do I do that? Like, I don't know how to speak in front of people. Okay. So she helped me draft this, like, super basic presentation to, like, tell people about composers. And I started talking about it. And then it, like, morphed into realizing that, you know, not just women are marginalized, and there are so many marginalized, you know, genders and races and cultures. And so I pretty much started turning my research into anyone that wasn't a cishet white male, you know, and I started documenting and doing a lot of research and doing a lot of spreadsheets. And then people started paying me to come talk and yell about how there are problems in the music world. And that just continued. And then, like, all of that was in person. And then the pandemic happened. And I was like, well, this can probably go virtual. Like, it's just a presentation and me yelling about stuff. Like, great. So that all happened. And then I was volunteering because I had a lot of anxious energy with the pandemic, as we all did. And I started volunteering with different organizations and with International Trumpet Guild, and someone forwarded me an email from a Carrie Blosser and was like, hey, you might really like this person. And so we started talking and wanted to make change really fast, and realized that all this research I had done, the catalog I had put out, like, there was nothing for younger players. And so it was like, okay, well, that's the whole. Like, we make music for younger musicians because, you know, most commissions, like a lot of commissions are like really advanced, professional, which is great and totally acceptable, but there wasn't anything for young players. And so we realized, let's figure out how to make a business, and let's figure out how to do a big commissioning project. And for us, we knew it hadn't been done before, and so we really didn't do the market research because we were like, well, like, there's nothing out here, but our budget is what the two of us can afford if we empty our bank accounts. Like, that would super suck, but like, that's what would have to be done because we care about this project. And then had a successful crowdfunding run and launched the book in November. And yeah, like, it's been kind of wild. Again, just like you, like, I had no idea a handful of years ago that, like, this would have happened. I just knew, like, I didn't want to sit and play Beethoven in an orchestra.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's so much space for people to do things all the time. We've just been talking about this in a couple of the other panels about just finding things that you're interested in and finding projects that serve you and things that are just a little bit niche, a bit different, a bit more interesting. So like, you know, my experiences are slightly different. I'm not running a business, famously. We do not do very much with money here. That's why we're all here, and the fact that we're having fun. But, you know, a lot of the things do cross over. There were other podcasts similar to mine, but they focused on big names, you know, the household names of brass. And I thought there were more people than that doing more varied things than that. And, you know, there's that little hole. There wasn't something similar coming out of the UK specifically at that time either. So a lot of musicians over here were getting kind of missed out or chopped off if they weren't like, you know, international superstars. And we need those people too. And so, yeah, I mean, I came into it from a similar position of there was this gap and I was interested and, you know, I could fill that. It's hard to sort of maintain that, though. I don't know if either of you found a similar thing, that other similar things maybe start popping up when people see what you're doing. It's like, oh, that person's doing a thing that looks a little bit like what I'm doing, and it's really hard to then keep your head down and keep keep doing what you're doing and not get distracted in competing and things. Anyway, I will not continue on this tangent because I will just off the track completely. So I wonder that there are lots of things that we've all gained skill-wise from doing these things. Are there any skills that you've gained specifically from running your business or project and things like that? Like, I had no idea how to do anything really with social media beforehand, and I didn't know how to interview. Like, if you listen to my first episodes, my interviewing is hilarious. I sound like a robot that has been programmed to ask questions, but you know, we live and learn. And there were things that I was like, I want to do this, but I guess I'm just gonna have to learn as I go. Were you in a similar position? Were there things that you're like, oh, I've got this skill and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this, that are just because of, you know, what you've been working on?
Oh yeah, I had a whole...
Yeah, sorry, go on, actually.
Oh, I had this whole sticky note of like things I need to learn and get through, and I had all these like free courses pinned out on like how to build a great website, how to learn SEO techniques, how to, you know, start designing graphics that don't look ugly.
I'm still learning that.
All these things, and I think one of the biggest has been how to design a book, because I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I had to download a new program, and I had no idea any of this. I'm like measuring margins with like a big like tape measure thing to like make sure everything's accurate. Yeah, there's been so much, and things I don't know you'd never thought of before. Like a couple weeks ago, Carrie and I were like, oh, we have to issue 1099s. So I'm Googling like, how do you even do that? I know I received them in January, but I don't know how to send them. It's all these things that you don't realize. Sometimes you don't realize you don't know until they just pop up and you're like, well, gotta look it up now. But thankfully, like with the internet and all the technology that we have, like it's so easy to find answers and to find help from people that do know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that you're my brethren, because you're a musician who also... you probably sometimes talk to people about what you're working on and they kind of glaze over, because you, like, for me it's like, oh, I've been working on my staff handbook. Yeah, I had to do a grievance policy, and yeah, I had to watch this webinar on GDPR and data policies and data handling and things, and they're just like not interested. And I go, I respect that completely, but it's the kind of things that I've come across, especially now that I've got an employee. You know, you have to have really tight contracts, and you have to have lots of legal things in place, and you know, you have to set up payroll, and there's all sorts of things. So my knowledge has grown hugely, you know, about all those kind of things. But I think the skill that I've gained the most is confidence. I basically, when I went into this boot camp at the start of my Young Innovators Award, I said to myself, see this as a social experiment, because this is not, you have your career, you have your teaching and your playing career. This is something, it's the pandemic, it's unprecedented. Oh, there's that word again, unprecedented. We haven't had that for a while. But, you know, it's almost like an alternative reality, you know, that we're in. It was very strange. And I just said to myself, just go in and just say yes to everything. I ended up doing a radio interview with half an hour's notice. You cannot imagine the anxiety that just hit me like a train when I got told that. But they said you don't have to do it. But I just went, yes, let's do it. And I did it. And, you know, it wasn't the end of the world. And there have been a few things that I've done which haven't gone perfectly. But I have started to develop the ability to not see that as the end of the world. And to go, you are never going to get everything right every time. So having this opportunity has allowed me to grow my confidence in a different way to how my confidence was growing as a performer, because I mean, I was listening into some of your panels earlier talking about well-being and that kind of thing. You know, there's imposter syndrome, there's all sorts of things that come with being a performer that make building your confidence difficult. So I guess I've kind of approached building confidence in a different way with the business.
Yeah, I think what you said in there about always saying yes to things, there a lot of the opportunities that I've gotten have just been like on a whim. Like when my boss for Rising Tide asked me, do you want to start a publishing company? I was like, I don't know how to do that, but like, why not? And yeah, saying yes. And recently I just did a podcast interview I edited actually that our guest was saying how, yeah, to never close doors, to always say yes, to you know, why not? Because you don't know where your pathway is going to take you if you close off everything, and just allowing yourself opportunities to grow. The other big thing that I realized while you were talking, skill that I've learned, just outreach to people. I used to be like, now I have all of these composer friends and I have all of these musical friends in different areas, because now I'm not, and I guess that's the confidence too. I'm not afraid to reach out to people and just introduce myself and say hi, when before I was like, oh, I can't talk to composers because they're like this entity of people that write music and they wouldn't want to talk to me. And when in reality, like, they're just really weird people too. And that's okay. As everyone listening to this will experience that at what, 3 p.m. your time?
Midday at the moment.
Or is that the evening one? I don't really know. Time zones. But yeah, it just being able to outreach and being able to ask questions and ask for help and ask for advice. When you know someone, you know, has a strength in something you're looking to do. And now I don't care about cold calling, cold emailing, I guess. Worst case, they just don't answer, you know?
Oh, that's such a common case in my life.
Yeah, I think a little... I just wanted to add a little caveat to the always say yes. I think another part of the confidence is having the ability to know when someone else is talking nonsense. Like, so there's been a couple of times where if I had not been more confident in myself, I would have listened to them telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about because I'm a musician and I'm not in business. But actually being able to go, I have grown my business from the ground up. I know every single area of it. And whilst maybe this sounds a little arrogant, it's not at all. If anyone says, I have advice for you, then I'm like, yes, all ears, please, I want to learn. But when somebody says, well, no, what you're talking about is wrong, you don't understand it, I have the ability now and the confidence to say, that's your opinion, I don't agree, because I have done my research. So, you know, if someone is kind of going, I think you should do this, this is the right thing for your business, you don't always have to say yes if you know, if you're confident in your own ability to say, actually, no, I'm sorry, thank you for advice, but I know my business very well and I know that is not the right path for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much to take on board. And I'm curious though, I didn't send this question out, this is just because apparently my brain has decided to work again for 5 minutes. Are there any of the things to do with your businesses that you wish they'd included in any of your sort of university experiences, or, encouraged more in us? Do we wish that they had said, hey, here's all these other career paths you can have, and here's how you can achieve this, and we'll even give you a bit of experience and education in it? Or do we wish it was still like, find your own path, carve your own way? Which way do you think, and about any of that.
This is not necessarily a like a career path, but can I just do a quick public service announcement to everyone, all self-employed musicians? Please get yourself a pension, right? Nobody told me that I was supposed to do this, and now my business advisor was helping me to set up a pension. Is it on your to-do?
This is literally my note off of my desk about sorting my pension. So yeah, look, I advanced took the note.
Nobody told me at school, nobody told me at college, nobody told me when I left college, and then suddenly I've got this business advisor saying, you know, oh, well, where do you have your own pension? And I was like, well, I don't have one. And she was like, what? But obviously it's something that your employer in the UK sets up for you when you know, when you join, when you are employed, they set it up for you, and you have to actually, I'm not sure now if the rules are you have to opt in or opt out, but you know, it's all there ready to go for you. It's very simple. Whereas when you're self-employed, you need to do this yourself. So yeah, spend a bit of time researching that. Just quick PSA. That's what I learned, and it blew my mind.
US equivalent would be our like 401ks. Same like sort of deal with employers that freelancers don't have. Yeah, a lot of things. I wish, like, I know, you know, universities can't cover everything, and obviously there's so many paths that they can't cover, you know, everything that you could do. But I wish there was some sort of class to just teach basic, you know, building a brand, and teach people, at least I don't know how it's called in the UK, but like in the United States, we've got limited liability companies, LLCs. So that's like, if I were to start a business, I think every musician should make an LLC, and they don't teach you that here. And it's as simple as just like going online, paying $100, then you are a business. And having just a you account versus you business account makes a huge difference, because then if you were to get sued, they'd sue your business and not your personal assets. I just had a call with someone earlier this week about this, because she was like, this is overwhelming and no one's taught me. Like, yeah, no one's taught anyone, and you just have to assume you know how to do all the things. But for any musicians, whatever country you're listening from, look into, if you don't already have one, look into making some sort of like LLC, personal business. Send me an email if you need advice, because it's not hard and it's not expensive, but it can really save a whole lot of hassle if, you know, if something were to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I left college with like the basic, you know, a website would be useful. Here's how to put on a concert. Things that actually, with a bit of common sense, were fine. But there are more things that we're talking about that we weren't encouraged to do. You know, things to do with public speaking and how to effectively research these specifics and things like that. That, I don't know, I quite like learning, so maybe I didn't mind so much, but I do think there were ways to include that in some of the things that we did study in some of the sort of subjects that were covered.
So I went to obviously the same college as you. I did take a module called Public Presentation and Performance with Paul Bartholomew, and that was an absolutely excellent class, and that taught you how to, you know, he would kind of give you a word, and then you'd have to talk about it for a minute, and it could be cabbage, you know, it could be anything, and you had to just come up with something, you had to keep talking, and that was really useful. But there were a lot of things that I did feel at my time at music college were lacking. I sort of felt like I ended up sort of by accident on the classical saxophone course. I have not played bolero since leaving out of choice. And you know, there were a few things with the college that, you know, I felt like I made it clear from the start that I won't get into how I ended up on the classical sax course, but you know, I was there, and then I sort of realised that what I wanted to be doing was doubling, and I sort of found it was quite a battle to get the time and the resources and the support to do doubling. However, I do know they actually started this whilst I was there. They do have a musical theatre doubling postgrad course now for woodwind doublers, which is really good. And I do know, because I spoke at one of their classes, they do have an artist as entrepreneur module now as well. So I have definitely been critical of music colleges in the past. I'm just cautious now because I do know things are changing, which I think is really positive. So I would love to hear from some more recent graduates to see how they have found going into the world of real work and how they felt that music colleges have supported them. It seems really good. I think that the artist as entrepreneur module, they have to do their own projects. They have to do a project plan, which is great. That's what I have to do for my innovation award. So again, there's crossover skills there that would really help them with actually getting funding in the real world. So yeah, I would love to hear more about what all the colleges are doing, and universities as well. I don't really know much about music courses at universities, but yeah, that would be interesting to explore as well.
Yeah, the hard thing is that at least over here, like schools, it takes so long to make change and to like redo programs and to add things in. And the technology, as we see, like it changes so fast. Like even I don't have one, but with like TikTok being like super big and I've seen musicians, making these content creation platforms, and it's all these things that they don't teach you. But even like when I was just starting, I started my bachelor's in 2013. Ew, 2013.
Stop it! Mine was 2009. Stop that now.
I managed to omit the date that I left, or did I say it? I don't know, but I'm not going to say.
But when I started at University of Illinois, music technology was just becoming a thing. Like we were one of very few schools that like had a well-known music technology program. And I took a course and it was like, here's Audacity 101 and how to like change your sounds. But then now there are some universities that have one of my intern for Rising Tide is coming from Middle Tennessee State, and they have a whole music industry program where it's like, you want to be in library sciences and organize stuff, like super. You want to learn how to book artists and book performers and like be in that side of like the booking side of music industry? Great. Do you want to make your own path? Like awesome. Do you want to be behind the scenes in admin and orchestra? And those programs are starting to pop up over here, and I think they're so cool because they allow like the intern program at that particular school allows the student to match up with an organization that like their personal mission and goals fit. And so we're allowed to, really cater like the intern program to what they want to do to give them the experience. And things like that are really cool because it's a newer program, like a couple years old, but it's all popping up really recently. So I agree. I think change is happening. Sometimes change takes forever to happen, but then there's some schools that are showing these opportunities that are really applicable to, the real world right now.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say, like, I sounded a little bit like I was slightly shitting on Trinity, which I absolutely was not. I think Trinity have always been slightly more open-minded and ahead of the curve. So actually, we did get to do things that, had we gone to a different college, we wouldn't have been able to do at all. But it's really good to learn about these programs. Like I had no idea that the Artist, the Entrepreneur program was there, and it is amazing to hear. That these ideas that people are having are being put to action. It's very reassuring. I'm pleased. Not that they care. I'm pleased, but I'm just for the forum. I am pleased. Anyway, funding is a word that we all require and probably hate. Is funding as difficult to acquire for businesses and projects as perhaps I make it seem? But as people imagine. Or do we just need to find the right sources to support our projects?
Well, it's interesting because I think, Ashley, you said that you've been through crowdfunding, whereas I've been through a sort of different path. I've got government funding. I will say straight away that I do feel that I've been very lucky. I've won 2 of the 3 funding awards that I've gone for. So Arts Council rejected my project. Which I think a lot of, I mentioned because I know that a lot of musicians will probably be familiar with the Arts Council. That was rubbish. That was after I'd got my very first award, which was, I say only £5,000. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but, when I first got the £5,000, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest chunk of money I've seen in my life. And then as you start to develop a business, there's costs here. You've got to pay for this. You've got to have a subscription here. You've got to pay national insurance, and so you kind of start to go, okay, I can see why the numbers are sometimes quite so big in business. And you just are then constantly looking for, the next lot of funding. So it can be quite tiring. You do sort of, the way I did it, I started small and then I've grown from there. So the next lot of funding is actually £50,000. So obviously that has made a huge difference to me. But yeah, I got rejected from the Arts Council. And I know lots of other people, lots of other young innovators who constantly go for funding, get rejected. So they were accepted for one award, then for whatever reason, just competition or just the way that their proposal was worded, or there's hundreds of reasons why they wouldn't get it, and probably none of those are really, or very, very few of those are to do with the quality of their project or their business. So I guess when it comes to funding, is it difficult to find? I think so. The way I found the Young Innovators Award is just through the Trinity Lab and Careers email. Actually, they have a funding section, and it was there, and it's not art specific, but technically Starling Music Academy is a tech startup, so that's why it was eligible. But my business advisor now is just advising me to just constantly, search for tech funding, arts funding, music funding, and things crop up. You can sign up for updates on some sites, or it's just a case of just set a note in your diary to just have a Google for an hour today, just see if you can find some funding, and also just talking to people, let people know. So there's a new Young Innovators cohort, and there's a few where I've said to them, I'm not in the same industry as you, but if I ever hear of any competitions that are in your sector, I'll let you know. So, speaking to people is always going to be useful as well. So I wouldn't say it's as easy. There's not a directory anywhere, at least not in the UK, that says, here's all the funding you can get. Innovate UK is where I've got some of my funding from. So they do have a list of their awards. They don't often have any art specific ones, but again, check back, you never know. And yeah, Arts Council, definitely worth trying.
Yeah, I think from my end, we did go the crowdfunding route because we wanted our project in particular. The goal was to reach a lot of people really fast. So we ended up going through Indiegogo and PayPal because some people like the crowdfunding platforms and some people don't. And this was after setting up a separate business bank account because we were like, I don't feel right trying to collect $10,000 and have it be in my personal bank account. That feels kind of gross. So yeah, we went the crowdfunding route, and it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to coordinate all of the tiers and the donor levels, and making sure that we had outreach with the donors. And I have sent, big skill I learned was crafting emails that are very short and very concise in a couple of sentences. And Carrie has helped me become a really great editor. Thanks, Carrie. Because the longer the email, the more people probably won't read it. So learning how to craft emails, sending out a lot of email outreach, a lot of campaigns to just reach people, because the hardest thing is just getting the word out. And yeah, we ended up raising over $10,000 to cover the entire project, which was awesome because then neither of us had to go in the red with our personal funds. And from there, now we've transitioned and we applied and just received 501c3, and we're an official nonprofit. So it's slightly different now, but still the same. And we're looking at a lot of grants this year. I just had a meeting with a mentor of mine to talk about how to ask for funding from non-musical sources, because over here, music nonprofits and music organizations aren't the ones that have tons upon tons of money, which is fine. So my big thought and my 2022 mission is how to make my project worthwhile to fund for people that aren't necessarily in music, because the groups not in music are the groups that have more money and funding. So right now we're still in project specific. I am fully volunteer, Carrie is fully volunteer as we set this up. Thankfully, the composers who commissioned are paid, but yeah, it's been an interesting process to try and hunt down grants, to try and find grants, to learn how to craft a great grant. And now as we move into like being a nonprofit, thinking about partnerships and thinking about how we can make partnerships worthwhile for other organizations to work with, and how we can, sustainably build something. So like eventually I would love to have this as my job. That just takes a lot of time. So yeah, there is funding. It's just tricky to find. And it is like all of the grants and the applications and stuff, they're so subjective that, yeah, you have one grant and it may completely align with this place, and you may use the same grant for something else, and you think it fits perfectly and you don't get it. And so there's a lot of like behind the scenes things that we don't see, that it's like an audition, Not every audition, no matter if you play your complete best, will be successful, and that's okay. Just like, when you were talking about the failures earlier, we can learn from that. As musicians, when we practice and we screw something up, we take it as data, learn how to fix it, and then move on from there. And that's a lot of what being a music entrepreneur is. Like failing, figuring out this data on, okay, what can I do better, and moving on from there. And so hopefully this answers the question. But yeah, funding is just so tough. It's tough, and if you are looking to make your own career path, that's awesome. Don't expect to make millions right away. Mm-hmm. Because it just takes time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes time, and I'm a very impatient person, and I've tried to learn patience because I know building something sustainable just takes some time to set everything up to be quote unquote successful.
Yeah, I completely understand.
About things taking time, it's I think anyone who sort of knows me and knew in October 2020 when I won the Young Innovators Award, they're probably going, where is it then? Where's your course? Come on, you've been talking about this for ages. Where is it? And my response to that is just, there is so much behind setting up a business, and I'm determined to do it properly. I'm learning as I go. I'm doing everything myself. I'm essentially doing the admin, the finance jobs, and creating course content, and the social media. Well, that's been a bit lacking recently, but again, that's something hopefully that will pick up once I have an employee who will be taking some of the jobs off me. But I don't feel like I've failed because I haven't released the course yet, because I know that when I release the course, it will be exactly as I intended it to be, and it will achieve everything that I want it to achieve, and it will be everything legally tied up. That's so important, and you can't just start taking people's money if you don't have lots of things in place first. So
exactly,
I think that some people might say, well, you've given this a good go. you started back in April 2020, and we're now in 2022, and you haven't launched yet, and you've got no revenue. Fine, but clearly there is potential in it because I've managed to secure funding. So that is what keeps me going. And also, if I didn't get the funding, I still wouldn't give it up, because I've done all the planning, project planning, and I can see the potential, and I'm just excited to get there, but it's going to take time.
And it's so much stuff that people don't see from the UI, from the front end perspective. They don't see all of the time, all of the emails, all of the drafting, all of the editing that goes into something. They just see the final product. And it takes so much work. And so, for anyone listening that's like, oh, I have this idea, just realize that it is hard work, which is great. But if you're passionate about it, that's going to make it all worthwhile. It's going to make those hours worthwhile, and just putting things into perspective and reminding yourself why you do this. You're going to hear her in the 15K panel later, but Estella Aragon is my personal mentor, because she started Trumpet Headquarters a few years ago, and I've gone to her on those days that I don't want to send these emails, I don't want to do this work, it's tiring, just as a reminder. I'm please tell me it gets better, and please tell me, it's not gonna, it may not suck tomorrow. And so having, your little village, your little community of people that you can go to and trust, because you don't have to do this alone. And yeah, that's been really helpful for me, knowing the people that I can go to ask questions and to, you know, hype me up on like really bad days is really useful.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm keeping an eye on the time because as anyone that's been watching this morning knows, I keep just going off on tangents and then being like, oh crap, next one. So I don't want to like chop it off all of a sudden without asking the last question. And this is one, I mean, this whole fundraiser is so that I can go to the International Women's Brass Conference this year. I did an interview for them last year and I liked this question so much I've stolen it and put it in for most of the panels for today. So thank you, but not sorry. I've stolen your questions. This one is then, if money were no object or no obstacle, what is a dream project that you would like to run or be involved in? And it can be linked to your businesses or it can be completely different.
Well, I think that this is going to sound so horribly cliche and dreadful, but I think that Starling is my dream project because although I'm starting off with music theory courses, I've tried to set up Starling Music Academy in a way that I can go off in all sorts of different directions. And I have this mind map on my computer, and one of the arms is music theory, and then I have lots of other ones that I've written it down, and then I just have to go put that on the shelf because I can't distract myself. I've got so much with this little project first, but it's all there. It's all in the mind map, and you know. So I think maybe one of those arms would be the best thing that I want to, the biggest thing that I want to do. But I just think that having this company has just been the most fun and the most interesting thing I've ever done. And so I think that this whole long-term project is exactly what I want it to be. And I think that's what's great about being an entrepreneur and setting up something from nothing. Because then you decide exactly how to sculpt it and mold it, and you make it into exactly how you want it to look. So yeah, I'm sorry that is so cheesy. I wish I had a better answer.
It's okay, everyone likes cheese, it's all good.
Well, I don't have a better answer because it's the same thing. When I answered that question for the IWBC brass flexibilities, I was like, oh, I would love to commission composers and make recordings. Which, like, I'm doing significantly less recording right now, which is totally cool with me. But I think I would still commission composers. I want to build up, diversify the stand to be, like, you all may not know, but anyone in the US, there's a really awesome nonprofit called the Sphinx Organization. They're based in Detroit, and they're all about just providing opportunities to performers and educators of color and entrepreneurs. And they've got these like 4 big areas that they cover, and they have a ton of things underneath, but they started off as a competition 25 years ago. And that's like, I want to be like that. I have commissioning is one part. I want to make something big enough that I can provide, grant opportunities for other entrepreneurs and paying composers to do a whole lot of commissioning and just making a whole lot of change in kind of the realm of music programming. But yeah, I have all these like little areas that I'm like, once I have time, I just don't have time or funding right now. But yeah, I think what Carrie and I built, I didn't realize would be like the path that I want to do, but that is like my life's mission, to like build this up into something big and influential in the best way to help a lot of people and help a lot of dreams come true.
Yeah, I hope that anyone
is cheese here.
Well, no, because there's nothing wrong with being a bit cheesy or a bit cliche if that's what you're passionate about, and you can't invest yourself and all of this effort into a project that you are like half-assed, half invested in. So it's not really cheesy at all. It makes perfect sense that that's the way that you both feel about the things that you're working on.
At least we're not both like, oh, I want to get out of this as soon as possible. When did I start this? What am I doing? I think some days probably when we're going through policies, actually, we're probably like, oh.
I had a chat with my boss for Rising Tide, and we were thinking like, okay, we're a 2-man team for, a 2-woman team for the publishing company as well. She's like, okay, if you have another team member, what would you outsource? And I was like, social media and graphics. I hate doing it. I know it needs to get done, so I do it, but like immediately just have someone do all the social media because like I do not want to. But right now, like, what other option is there? No posts, or I have to spend my time making posts. So no, you know, for anyone thinking I want to do something, know that there may be parts about it you love and parts about it you don't like, and try to just get through the parts you don't like because it has to get done.
It will be worth it.
Yeah, actually, I don't know what you're talking about. Canva is your best friend in the same way that Canva is my best friend.
You know, that's another skill I learned. Yeah, that was one of my skills. I only use Canva when I need to make a lot of graphics really fast. I personally use Affinity Designer, which Lauren Rudzinska's got me into. It's way better, but it's more of like a Photoshop level program. Mm-hmm. There's like a quite a steep learning curve.
Ellen and I are both writing this down.
Yep.
Oh, it's so great. And if either of you get it, I could give you like a tutorial hang. Because yeah, I have some issues with Canva because it doesn't always do what I want, but it's really great for like pumping out a whole lot of graphics when I need them really fast.
Yeah, it's like if I had more time or another person, I would absolutely opt to use something else. But Canva's that sort of thing where I'm like, I've got 10 minutes between students and I've got this graphic to finish, like just dragging it together on my phone. It's also that I will use the excuse for that as to why I often make spelling errors on it. So always check my posts for me. Sorry, Rhiannon, because it was your name that I got wrong the last time.
I saw it straight away.
Yeah, it's a good job you've got beady eyes because I clearly was sleeping on the job. Yeah, sleeping on the job. Folks, I've just seen the time, so I think it's safe to wrap up here, but it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone listening has gleaned some really useful information and realizes how much work is going in behind the scenes of these wonderful businesses. But thank you so much for coming and spending the time with me today. It's been so lovely to see you both, and slightly unceremoniously, I have to end the call to stop the live. So I will speak to you all very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you.